Good morning. It's the Celtic Way morning briefing on July 20th. It's a big day. It's the first Champions League qualifier for Celtic this season. FC Midtjylland will be playing against the team at Celtic Park this evening. A lot of speculation about who's going to be in the starting lineup. Celtic's squad is still pretty thin and threadbare since Ange Postecoglou came into the position of manager. It seems that Abada is not going to be selected. I don't think he's in the squad for this evening. So Tony Haggerty is with me, Andy Bargh, at the moment, just to try and comb through what actually might happen, because it seems to be all up in the air at the moment, Tony.
Yeah, I think if you'd have said to the Celtic supporters when they get rid of Neil Lennon in February, and then obviously they took their time to get a new manager in, but if you'd have said to them, you will basically have no new signings in for the first Champions League match against Midtjylland, they would have said you were off your head. But that's more or less where Celtic are. And actually worse off because Ayer's not there. You know, and then the three players that they have signed or they've lashed money on, Furuhashi, allegedly Starfelt, and Abada, you know, they're in the door, but they're not able to play. I mean, it kind of beggars belief. And Ange sort of fired a warning shot over the bow yesterday when he used the word hesitant, didn't he? That Celtic had been hesitant in their transfer dealings. So it kind of showed you, or certainly to me, it sort of showed you where he was at with it all. He seemed really frustrated about
Do you think that's fair game to come out and say that, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I think it's fair game. I think he's also letting the fans know as well that I've been trying. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not my fault, you know, and I think the Celtic fans trust Ange. You know, they're getting behind him. And I think there's the whole machinations of every season Celtic go through this whole rigmarole with the Champions League. And for whatever reason, those upstairs just refuse to part with cash to fund a manager's spending spree to get in new players to equip themselves fully for a tilt at the Champions League qualifiers. You know, it's happened time and perpetual motion. The only two managers in recent history that hasn't happened to my knowledge, are Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers. You know, other managers have, you know, been left to struggle and make do with what they've had, and you know, and it's, I think it's unfair, and I think Ange is now feeling that. You know, he's kind of, you know, he just kind of had, you know, a thinly veiled pop yesterday. I would address it as, you know, because words like hesitant, Celtic have been hesitant in their transfer dealings. You know, that smacks of a man that's frustrated and clearly wanted players in the door, but maybe wasn't given the funds to do it, and certainly wasn't given the time to do it. You know, considering his own arrival into Glasgow. So, but it is a strange one that Abada's not there.
Yeah, Mealy's boys in the comments saying that it's strange Abada's not in the squad, especially when the winger situation is quite desperate, because Dembele and Johnston now have injuries that will keep them out for at least a month, Ange Postecoglou says. Why would Abada not be in there? Because I doubt that he's any unfitter at all than the boys that are in the squad already.
I can only presume that it might be, you know, work permit clearances, because he was listed as a trialist on Saturday, wasn't he? I believe. So there might be issues with that and getting clearance in time. So I can only assume that's what's happened here, because, you know, Ange Postecoglou's spoken about width in the Celtic team. That's the way he likes to play. So why would you not put him in? But so there must be some background issue with the clearances and paperwork, because I don't understand. Otherwise, why wouldn't be selected?
Will James Forrest play then?
Depends how fit James Forrest is. And he's not had any minutes in his legs, has he? In the whole of the pre-season.
He didn't take part in the Wales training camp. He was isolating. You
know, so it depends if he's been doing fitness stuff on his own, which you would imagine he will be. But again, it's another risk. Do you throw him in, and if he gets injured, then you really are. You know, you might give him an hour, or he might give him half an hour. You know, from the, you know, it's up to Ange the way he sees it, the way he wants to call it. But you know, he has got problems, because the squad is down to its bare bones now. As you mentioned the word threadbare, I've mentioned it before, but there's a chronic lack of depth in Celtic squad now.
I suppose Christie has played out wide before. We discussed on the morning briefing at the end of last week, I think, that it's a tough situation for Christie because his contract's coming to an end. Celtic could get some money for him if a team in France, as suggested, or maybe England, come in to buy him. If Christie was to play tonight and get injured, then Celtic won't get any money because nobody will buy him until he's fit. So how do they approach that?
It's a catch-22, but I always think, Andy, we spoke about this the other day, you play your strongest 11. You know, Ange needs a result here. He has to hit the ground running. You know, he knows that. So I think he'll go with tried and tested. And I think Christie will feature. Because needs must. That's the situation Celtic find themselves in. Needs must. And it's not ideal for either Christie or Celtic. But while those guys are there, they have to put in a shift. You know, and Christie, like Edward, like Ayer, will probably leave the club. But while they're there, you have to utilise them. Especially if you want to take another step closer to the potential abundance of riches that the champions qualifying for the group stages can get you. You know, but you have to, from the here and now, you've got to concentrate against Midtjylland and you've got to play your strongest team.
But it was always going to be quite a lengthy process getting Celtic back to where they want to be. I think when Ange Postecoglou came in with the change in the chief executive role as well, and a massive player turnover needed to get Celtic challenging for the title probably. Charlie Nicholas has been in the news saying that the era so far has been a disaster. Is it wrong to be jumping to conclusions like that at the moment and throwing adjectives as such around when it is still very early days?
That's a bit of an outrageous statement to say it's a disaster, isn't it? Because let's be honest, they have brought in 3 players, right? They've brought in Starfelt, they've brought Abada, they've brought Furuhashi, but you're not going to be able to see them. But in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time, Celtic will gradually improve because the signs are that they are going to bring in players, but they've just not brought players in for the Champions League qualifiers for whatever reason, which continues to bewilder the supporters because that's the first game. It's not as if the first games that Ange Postecoglou will encounter are league games where he has not a wee bit of time to prepare, but the first games are always the qualifiers. They're always mid to late July. So, and the Celtic board always know that, yet they continue to falter and never ever deliver players to a manager for those games. But Celtic will improve because those players coming in will improve the team. They're going straight in. They're first team ready, as we say, battle hardened players. So, to call it a disaster, I mean, we spoke on Monday. This isn't Ange's fault. This is all down to timing and the board not trusting their man to spend the money or not releasing funds for the man to spend money to get players in for the here and now. You know, but over time, Celtic will improve and they will make a fist of a title challenge this year under Ange. You know, I'm pretty confident about that, but he does need time, but he also needs players, you know. And I think there's going to be a kind of hangover from Andy's first team will be like a Neil Lennon team, won't it? So because it's the same players he's to pick from.
Yeah, Mealy's boy back in the comments making the same observation. Absolutely, the Champions League route that Celtic have potentially to the group stages is tough because it's not tougher than it normally will be because it's not the Champions route. If Celtic do get past Midtjylland, it'll be PSV or Galatasaray. The loser of that tie between PSV and Galatasaray plays St Johnstone in the Europa League, which is quite a funny turn of fate. But Celtic have a lot of work to do if they get past Midtjylland. It's just going to get harder and harder and harder. What's important to consider is that at the moment it looks on track, or quite likely that whoever wins the Scottish Premiership this coming season will qualify automatically for the Champions League next season. Yeah. So it underlines the importance of this season's domestic campaign. Losses just need to be cut at the moment as far as the Champions League goes this season and just focus on trying to get the title back.
I think a lot of Celtic supporters would take that if they get put out by Midtjylland, but then somehow come next May they won the title and they got access to the 40 million money that's on offer for automatic qualification to group stages. You'd bite your hand off for that right now. But Celtic are competitive in every game. They want to see their team win every game. So I've spoken about words like free hit and a free pass. I don't exempt. I I absolve Ange Postecoglou from anything that happens in the European stage, because it's all come around too quickly, and he's not had a chance. He's not had a fair crack, and he's not had a chance to get his stamp on this team. You know, this is all the team, the remnants from Neil Lennon's era, and he's having to work with them and make do. You know, the 3 players coming in will be the start of his stamp on the team. You know, and I think once that happens, then Celtic it'll settle, become a bit more settled, and they will maybe get into their rhythm and their stride. But the problem is, Celtic are playing in the here and now. They're not playing in 3 or 4 weeks' time. You know, and there's a lot of important games in between such times when Ange can put his stamp on the team. And, you know, 4 of the first 5 league games are Hearts, Aberdeen, Rangers and Hibs. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, Hearts certainly. I need to check up on the rest of them. But yeah, Hearts' first game.
Yeah, you know, so it's a tough start. You might be behind the 8 ball through no fault of his own because of a lack of personnel. You know, so that's the worry moving forward for Celtic fans. No, I don't think I think they trust the manager implicitly, and they trust his methods, and they trust the way he wants to play. But he needs those players. He needs backing from the board to bring those players in to play that style. And I've no doubt that he will turn Celtic into a title-chasing or title-challenging team. But that's going to take time, and it's a commodity that Celtic really don't have at this moment.
Well, if you're watching, send in any comments so that we can have a chat about whatever's on your mind with regards to tonight's game. I suppose a talking point is Leigh Griffiths. Ange Postecoglou has said that he's fit, in contention and ready to go. Do you think there's a chance that he might get the nod up front, Tony?
I thought Ange dealt with that really, really well yesterday. You know, there's been a criminal investigation and there's been an internal investigation. He made no comment about Leigh Griffiths until both of those were concluded. He's now in contention as a first-team Celtic player because that's his job. I think there's a morality issue here with a lot of Celtic supporters and possibly the manager. You know, when you look at it, and I've defended Griffiths many times, but I think on this issue, Leigh Griffiths is morally bankrupt. And I think a lot of the Celtic supporters wouldn't want to see him in the team, but because of the nature of the threadbare squad and the lack of depth, he is now in contention and he could start. The manager might say to him, look, throw him in, you know, and it'll be interesting to see the reception he gets, you know. But as I've said there, I think it's not a particularly pleasant subject to speak about, and I think the player is morally bankrupt in the eyes of the Celtic fans, and it's a moral decision for Celtic to take whether Leigh Griffiths features for the club again, you know, and that's why Ange is getting paid the money. But I thought he's dealt with it all superbly so far. You know, Griffiths has been cleared of wrongdoing by the club and the law, so he now reverts to his job description, which is a Celtic player, and he's in that squad. Over to the manager for a call on that one.
Let's have a discussion about the back four. Mealy's boy again in the comments asking who we would play this evening. I suppose on the right, it can only be Ralston unless Urhoghide was launched over to that side where he can play but is not as natural as he is centrally. In the centre-half positions, God, it would be nice to have Julian and Starfelt starting for Celtic this evening. It's more likely probably to be Welsh and Bitton. Would you agree?
I think Welsh and Bitton, we were laughing yesterday, or joking that the unwritten Celtic law is that Neil Bitton plays in the Champions League qualifiers at centre-back. So I would probably think he would go with Neil Bitton and Welsh, with the fact that Neil Bitton's got that Champions League qualifying experience and a lot of European experience. Welsh will certainly feature, but a lot of Celtic supporters were erring towards Dane Murray, the youngster Dane Murray. I just think that would be a really tall order to ask a player like that to come in, and if it went wrong. But I like the look of Dane Murray. I think he's got something, you know, and could force his way in to the first team at some point this season, because he looks quite composed, and he certainly looks a better bet than Urhoghide, who I thought was positionally erratic. And, you know, just, I don't know, it might take a lot to convince the Celtic supporters that Urhoghide should be in that an automatic pick for the first team. But I'm like you. I think Beaton and Welsh and Ralston at right back and Taylor at left back. I think that's the strongest back four. I use strongest in inverted commas because it's not particularly strong, but it's probably the best back four he can go with at the moment.
Taylor over Bolingoli, who seems to be getting some sort of a clean slate.
Yeah, Taylor over Bolingoli. Yeah, it's a close one, but I still think Taylor edges that one. Bolingoli again is another one who has a lot to do to convince the Celtic supporters, possibly, and the manager that he has a future at the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll convene tomorrow and we'll discuss the fallout from the first leg. Depending on how it's went, it could be a happy show or a fairly defeated show. So, yeah, let's wait and see what happens tonight. It'll be fascinating to see how Postecoglou pieces together this jigsaw because, as you say, Tony, there just aren't too many pieces for him to put together at the moment. So it's a big test for him and a big test for the players. So we'll come back tomorrow morning and we'll see how Celtic, and we'll discuss how Celtic have got on in the first leg.